Well, good evening, and welcome to another episode of 5280 ASMR. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome into the show. It's a brand new 5280 podcast. Trying to find just anything to talk about because you got to talk Broncos, but I just don't know what yet. So we're just going to throw random stuff on the wall and see if it sticks, and we'll go with it that way. How was your guys' Easter? Did you guys have a good holiday?
I did. I feel like I was talking to my parents about this. I feel like it's an underrated holiday in the sense of like people don't talk about it as much in the sense of like the dinner that you have on Easter because it's like I feel like it's still within that same crop of like Thanksgiving and those other holidays where you feel like you eat so much food, with Easter. But it was fun. I'm excited obviously to talk about the Denver Broncos and be like George Payton and throw darts.
I was thinking more spaghetti. Like
Mom
spaghetti on the wall and see if it sticks.
You knew Mike was going to go for the carbs. You knew that.
Yeah. With Mountain Dew.
That's all I eat is carbs.
Yeah,
carbs,
can't forget.
And then in the blender with Mountain Dew and then blend it up. It's absolutely delicious.
What about you, Glenn? How was
good? It was great. Yeah, real low key. It was really nice. So it had as much Broncos stuff happening as did yesterday. So that was good.
That's good.
Oh yeah. Well, so there was one thing that I especially talked to Glenn about because he's been very upset with some things that have been said by Draymond Jones, who is kind of a big a-hole right now. Like, you go to the Seahawks and all of a sudden you're big in your britches. Like, shut your face and play
just
some ball.
A little bit.
Okay?
But then he backs off at like, oh, wait, I don't have anything against Denver, but it's like, dude, just enough already. You got out, you got your way, you big crybaby, your buddy was traded. You got your money. We have a formidable, replacement. I think we're going to miss Deshaun Williams.
It was the same thing with Chubb, though, wasn't it? It was the same thing with Chubb, though, right? Like he goes to Miami and he starts talking some crap.
But not to this extent, though.
So I can see why they're friends.
But still, it was never to this extent, though. And and to quote, the person that said it first, because it was kudos to Sayer for saying it first, because I don't want to plagiarize and steal anything he said, but he was spot on. He's like, it's unfortunate, that you feel disrespected, talking about Draymond Jones, that you feel disrespected. But on the surface, why are you feeling disrespected? The Broncos drafted you. The Broncos did not include you in the trade, which is something you talked about, that, if they really wanted to trade me to Seattle, they should have included me in the deal. Well, if they actually included you in the deal, just letting you know, Draymond, if they actually included you in the deal, that's because they probably did disrespect you, and so they decided not to include you. And so therefore, because of that, they actually respect you. Unfortunately, things just could never materialize for a contract. You kind of vocalized a little bit as far as, your concerns over that contract. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think I've said it before. I think I said it on mainly, but I also kind of been talking about it on our From the Orange Slack chat. But it's like, this feels a little bit like eerily similar to when Chris Harris Jr., when he left. And so I think that like it just feels eerily similar. I'm not comparing the players by any means because Chris Harris might go down as a Ring of Famer with the Broncos. Draymond Jones, he's certainly a tremendous talent, but like the way that things ended there was just very reminiscent of how things just got so bitter on social media and everything else down the line.
And I know I've said fans wanted him. The bitterness is what really annoys the shit out of me, quite honestly. Like the fans wanted him, and maybe not at a $20 million a year price tag, but he makes it very easy to to close that door behind him. Like I said, we've got Zach Allen, we've got some other things happening, and quite honestly, I'm pretty excited about it. He can take his millions. I wish we would have tagged him and flipped him to a crappy team.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, like I don't think he was worth what is he getting paid now? $20 million a year?
Just short of that. I think it's like 17.
I don't think he's worth that much. I know that he was a player that we were targeting to stay on the team, but I don't think he's done enough to be paid that much. I'm sorry. So I was fine with it.
But it's fair. I mean, we've had that argument before. It's fair. I think it's probably a little bit more on the side of he was the most logical tag candidate. So why did the Broncos choose not to tag him?
To stay in his good graces, and that didn't.
Yeah. So no, and we've mentioned that before, but it's just like that's just the one thing. It's just like, that why did they decide not to tag him? I guess it's just, again, like that's just the thing. It's like, but yeah, it was to kind of stay in his good graces, and with the whole coaching changes, and obviously with Bradley Chubb being gone, they did have to do that, and they did have to mend the fences. But unfortunately, the damage, it certainly seems at this point, was already done.
How much would the tag have paid him?
Way more than $17 million a year.
I was gonna say it would have been way up there, right?
Yeah, it would have been upwards of 18 to 20. I think it's probably within that range.
Yeah, I like it.
It was just for 1 year.
And
it probably burns his ass too that his replacement is the highest paid defensive player on the team right now. So,
yeah,
is he really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, kind of switching topics a little bit to nothing to do with football. DNVR had this big debate that Nick Ferguson weighed in on whether or not you can consider yourself a man or keep your man card or whatever they called it if you get pedicures. I've never had one, so I don't know. I don't care.
So that was actually 850 KOA, and that was actually a buddy of mine.
KOA, okay.
Yeah,
who was Anthony, right?
It was Anthony who had that conversation, yeah, about the
I saw a poll that DNVR pulled up about it.
Yeah. I know that I've had it before, and it's an experience, to say the least. Like when you because like you kind of like expect something going in, but like the moment it happens and someone unknown touches, your feet and whatever, it's a surprise. Let's just say that it's definitely a surprise. Even if say like you're not ticklish, and I use this in air quotes, if you're not ticklish, it's a surprise.
Well, like Nick Ferguson went into it like, if you got a date that night or you're meeting up with your lady, you don't want nasty feet. Okay. So,
see, I've had manicures. My wife has given them to me before, but I've never subjected anyone to doing a pedicure on my feet at all. So
I kind of feel like I need to go get one now, just because I haven't had one.
I feel like I'm picturing Cam just like squirming around, giggling like in the chair
the whole time.
That was actually my dad. Sorry, Dad, if you're actually listening, I decided to humiliate you on the podcast.
In fact, we have video footage of
right,
Mr. Parker,
right, squirming in his chair, and it's no wonder where Cam yells like a little girl from.
Okay, moving on from that one. All right, so Glenn sent me this from Ari Myrov about YouTube TV and their Sunday ticket prices. So it looks like if you're a YouTube TV subscriber, it's $349 for a season unless you purchase before December or June 6th, and then it's $249. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm assuming they're not letting you pay that in a monthly installment like you would for YouTube TV. You have to pay that all up front. Do we know that yet?
Well, if you're doing the purchase before June 6th, I would imagine you need to pay that off.
Right, but is it purchased before, or is it is it $349 spread out between 6 months?
I don't think so, man. I would imagine it's going to be if that prepaid discount for $100 discount, I would guarantee that fairly confidently that you're going to have to prepay that in full.
Okay, I'm looking to see.
I mean, this is way more expensive than I was anticipating, considering like with DirecTV, you had to have the dish on your roof, you had to subscribe to the service, you had all that stuff. So there was a lot of additional hoops to jump through in order to get that.
So that means that June 2nd, I'm 250s coming out of my account.
Do you have YouTube TV?
I do have YouTube TV.
Okay, I don't. So I'll be in the $349 range.
Right. So if for non-YouTube TV subscribers, it's $449 for the season, $349 if you pay before June 6th.
It's still too expensive for me.
And then there's a second option. You can do $389 if you're a subscriber if you bundle with Red Zone.
See where Cam
$289 if it's early, or $489 if you're not a YouTube TV subscriber.
Okay.
And then $389 bundled with Red Zone if it's before June 6th.
See, Cam, you don't
need
a lot of money. Yeah, Cam, you'll get all the games, so you don't need it at all.
Yeah.
Last year we didn't need DirecTV, but the Broncos were on 14 primetime games, but that's not going to be the case this year.
No.
But it's funny.
I amend that. It's 290s coming out of my account on June 2nd. But that's payday. So I'll get it good to go.
But it's funny though, because what is it? NFL Plus, they kind of ran through their whole cheaper options where you were able to watch preseason games, and even some games, I think, like for even significantly cheaper. And then also like to go even for other sports, like you have MLB.TV, which is like half of that. I think it's like what is it, $150 or something like that, maybe $199, like for to basically watch every single game for your MLB coverage. So I mean, like it's significantly less than that. So I don't know. It just feels so much like for something like that. Even for like YouTube subscribers as well, like for YouTube TV.
Well, what it's not going to do is it's not going to discourage people from doing the free streaming,
right? The streaming illegally.
Listen, like it's a lot of money, but I'm still paying it. Like, that was one of the things. It's like for me, I was thinking like, well, why wouldn't the NFL have their own YouTube channel, and then just you would have to pay a monthly membership fee to be a member of the NFL channel, and then they could stream all of the games.
Well,
this makes it a whole lot more expensive.
Well, to be fair, they do have their own YouTube channel. It's just the one thing that they do there is they'll push. You're such a kid.
I got 6 of them. I'm surrounded.
That made me think of the scene in Wreck-It Ralph. Yeah, but they do have, not but they do have what is it, an NFL channel. It's just they do like highlights and weekly highlights, and I don't know if they do like clips of like their NFL like total access segments or stuff like that, what they do with NFL Network, but like they do have an NFL channel.
Yeah, but that's why I was thinking like they would change their YouTube channel to be live streaming all the games. Like they would have the games separated on their YouTube channel that you would, if you were a member of their channel, you could then watch the games, right? But I mean, I guess this is a more expensive option, so they make more
very
money.
Expensive.
They still have a customer in me for sure. So
$290. I guess it's not too bad, but
okay,
17 games, not bad.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a non-YouTube TV subscriber, you suck. But it's like it's $100 extra bucks. That's funny.
It's funny.
It's funny. So let's go a little bit away from Bronco news. OBJ finally signs a 1-year deal with the Ravens. Apparently, Lamar Jackson had been pushing hard for OBJ, and so that is a sign, they say, that Lamar will be coming back to the Ravens to play with OBJ. That's a reach. That's a reach.
I don't think it's a reach at all. I
really
don't. No. I mean, like, Baltimore has been wanting, a should I say a true wide receiver one. I know OBJ has like his injuries and stuff like that, but like they've been wanting a true wide receiver one for that team for a long time. And I mean, I get the injury concerns and I get that OBJ's not necessarily been himself, but you put him in that kind of situation, you put him in that kind of environment, he is, to be completely honest, probably wide receiver one in that kind of environment, in that room. And so if that's a guy that Lamar Jackson wants, and, especially for popularity contests, bringing in the popular name and bringing in players that quarterback wants, yeah, absolutely. That is probably the guy that is, if he's not going to be going there, if Lamar Jackson's, not either signing his tag or, agreeing to the contract extension that, he would want from the Baltimore Ravens.
See, I don't think it's a given that he'll definitely be back. I mean, I think that OBJ chases the money. I mean, it'd be interesting to see it set up to $18 million. I'd like to see what the base actually is. I don't think that's been released yet. It could be like an $8 million contract with some bonuses and incentives, but this guy he's hardly played over the last 2 years. Didn't do anything in Cleveland. I would be sick if my team spent that kind of money on a 31-year-old or soon to be 31-year-old injured receiver who, to me, just hasn't done squat in years. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but I mean, the Ravens love older receivers.
The legends, Broncos Avenue in the chat.
By the way, shout out to Broncos Avenue. A few of their writers have been hired on by Predominantly Orange, so shout out to them. They do a really good show, Broncos Avenue. So go check them out.
Who did they just have on? They just had
Jordan Schultz.
Yeah, there you go.
It's doing great.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, like, look at it from the Ravens' perspective.
What up,
like, they were desperate. Yeah, there's no question they were desperate. And that's
because they traded away Hollywood Brown. Dumbest thing I've ever seen. Why did they do that?
No, that's not exactly what I'm trying to say. It's like they're desperate for a lot of reasons. They need that wide receiver one, but also they need to mend fences with Lamar Jackson. And, because let's be honest, like, there's no doubt it's been a completely chaotic and, like the press conferences with John Harbaugh and, everybody within the organization, it has been awkward. And so they need to do everything they can to certainly mend those types of fences. And, because I mean, ideally, I think they would love to have a guy like that, but I mean, if they decide to move on or decide to trade up, I mean, ideally, you're probably talking about drafting an Anthony Richardson or just drafting someone that you can certainly, like, keep that same kind of like quarterback style intact.
Sticking with Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. Sports Nonsense Whiskey says 13 millipin signing and like 1.5 salary. I'm assuming that's OBJ. So what? 13 million signing bonus. He's only getting $1.5 million per year, but he's only going to play what? 4 games? 5? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's probably what you're going off of, but I mean, like, that's also what we go off of with Randy Gregory. I mean, he stacks the stat book, but I mean, he's, and I love the guy, he's a former Nebraska Cornhusker, but like, again, your best ability is availability, and, he's definitely stacks the stat book, but, with he and OBJ, they are only available for X amount of games.
Bubba says, so the Falcons are acquiring cornerback Jeff Okudah from the Detroit Lions for a 2023 5th-round pick. He was a number 3 overall pick like 3 years ago, right? 4 years ago?
From the Ohio State University.
That's a big drop. Like, I know he hasn't been that healthy, but when he played, he's been good.
I'm pretty surprised with that, especially just getting a 5th. I thought Detroit was really trying to shore up that defensive backfield, and then they get rid of a number 3 pick. I mean, they must really think this guy stinks.
I think saying he's good is a bit of a stretch. Like, because like especially if they're they traded him for a fifth, that tells you enough how they felt about Okuda and moving on from Okuda, and so I think that like it's pretty obvious, to Bawana Beast in the chat, like it's pretty obvious they're absolutely going to be going corner.
And he
whether
doesn't
that's
think
Witherspoon or
that we
Gonzalez.
could afford Okuda if we would have gone after him. But Devin White is asking for a trade from the Bucks. Bucks say they're not going to let him go. But Devin White wouldn't be. I mean, would Devin White be somebody that we would want?
With what capital?
I think. Well, first of all, that's a position that we actually are in pretty good shape in.
That's outside, right?
Inside, but he's due about $12 million, and he's got his 5th year option coming, so he wants to make somewhere in the neighborhood of a $20 million a year contract. So he's not somebody I would think would be something that the Broncos could afford, nor should put some resources towards acquiring.
Yeah. And he's a guy that I think started out with some coverage issues, and it's kind of gotten worse, over the years. And Levante David is, certainly helped with that. But I think the thing that's kind of sad is like, wouldn't you want to stay there? And the fact that you've had enough, rapport with Levante David, and, seeing as Levante's, career is almost up, wouldn't you want to kind of stay there? And
that's the thing. Like, I know Levante David is getting up there in age and getting close to retirement, but I think I'd rather have Levante David
100%.
over Devin White.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, he was great during that Super Bowl run, but it really has tailed off the last year or two.
Agree.
Coverage still an issue. 2-down guy. Yeah.
He may not even be a 20 million. Maybe that's just dictating for the market to what you were talking about, Glenn. But it's like he may not even get 20 million a year. He could even get something between, maybe 15, 15 to 17, probably.
Yeah.
So
still, that's too rich for our blood.
Still, yeah. But and even then, like for the linebacker room, it's probably much safer, with Josie Jewell's contract coming up here soon. He's a free agent after this, after this year. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a huge need, but it's a need that if they drafted a linebacker in the draft, we're talking about a much more cheaper option that they clearly drafted instead of going out and, trading for Devin White.
We want White, but have no picks, and he wants Roquan money. Yeah, pretty much. Bubba asked, anything lately on Hunt? Yeah, why is Kareem Hunt still available? I know that people think he's a crap human, and I get it. As far as like talent on the field, Kareem Hunt's got to be up there for best running back available.
There was a weird report. That came out, and I saw it from the the guy that you always see all the time that spreads the news, because he's not a guy, he just spreads the news, and that'd be Dov. But he shared Dov Kleiman. He shared a thing that came from somebody, I forget who it was, but he said that the only deal that he would be expecting at this rate is probably like that 1 year $4 million deal, which is like, if that's the deal that he's expecting, why aren't you signing a deal like that? So so that's kind of like my thing is like, unless the thing of like his past and now he's a free agent is like starting to come up again, and and with maybe the age that he's at, or even though he's young, or do they still want to take a chance on him like that? I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So as far as Broncos news, that's about it. Like,
well, I mean, they did meet for the first time today, Mike.
Yes, they did.
But
did we get anything out of that though?
Dude, they have been so tight-lipped. I mean, Peyton told the reporters at the beginning of the news conference that you're not going to hear anything, but just rest assured we're doing stuff behind the scenes.
Here's a question. Here's a question for you guys. Do you guys actually believe Sean Payton when he was interviewed by an actual like golf reporter, like over the weekend, or like an interview, and like said that like still he continued this theme of like that they've not met or that they've not even talked, and that this is the first official team meeting. Do you guys actually believe the fact that they've not like had a team meeting at like?
I'm sure there's been Zooms or team calls or something.
Well, I think he's talked to individual people, but this is probably the first time that everybody's in the building together. And Amanda Valionis-Renner, she actually is in addition to the golf, she does do NFL games also. So like, she's certainly tied in.
I'm sure that like Peyton walked into a restaurant and was like, "Oh, what's Russ doing here?" And then Russ walked over to the table and was like, "Oh, what is Sutton doing here? I didn't know you were here." Just meeting random people in the restaurant. Like, oh, that's amazing. So glad we could run into each other.
Yeah. Kind of feel like it's scripted in a way.
But last year they were doing all the social media posts and the media was allowed in the building and things like that, or at least, I think they were left at the curb. I think and like Chris described it as being standing in the gutter at the at the entranceway.
And like I almost appreciate how much insider information we got last year with all the social media posts, but I think I prefer this way. Like,
but even then, but even then, the stuff that got leaked was something that also never came true. And like that's the thing with we mentioned about George Payton last year, and people bring as far as like the clashing potentially with Sean Payton and George Payton, are they going to work together? Like people forget like George Payton was kind of tight-lipped as well. So I mean, it's just like he was pretty tight-lipped. Maybe not necessarily to the likes of Sean Payton, but like it certainly helps having like that kind of like same mindset of being that kind of tight-lipped. And so ideally, I think it certainly bodes well for both of them when you're kind of like that tight-lipped.
Well, like coming at it from a podcast point of view, like I'm almost more okay with not knowing any new information, because then we can just kind of come up with stuff to talk about, as opposed to like everything getting released, but there's 4 different versions of it. So then there's infighting amongst everyone, because it's like, no, it's this way. And then someone else, no, it's that way. I'd rather have it this way.
I mean, think about it. It's like the first team meeting, and the Broncos social media team is like, oh my gosh, what can we do? Let's put pictures of the scoreboard. Let's do that. Right. All right. So look at this glorious monster.
Well, this was the first year that, even with the head coaching search that I can certainly recall, like this was the first year that I can certainly recall, like the social media team for the Broncos never even tweeted out anything that was like, okay, we've completed an interview with Sean Payton. We've completed an interview, with this candidate and this candidate and this candidate. They never did that this year. Like they were so hush hush, even before Sean Payton and these head coaching interviews, that it was like, so it was definitely that kind of year, even before Payton was hired.
So I did have another question, and this is more for like Glenn, because he, with having the season tickets. So they're doing the $100 million renovation on Empower, right?
Yeah.
With the amount of money that they jacked up the season ticket prices to, are we expecting some like major things with construction, or are they just raising the price that high because we brought in Sean Payton? Like, why are the prices getting jacked so high?
The explanation was that they were basically suggesting that everybody was getting a deal all along. So as your contracts expire, they're resetting the pricing and putting it back where it needs to be. For a lot of people, it was like 30 to 40%, which is a lot. For a 5-win team is just like, you got to be kidding me. So, but it is going to be a great experience when you to see the stadium with that type of an upgrade. And it's amazing that they can spend that kind of coin and get something done in just a matter of months. Like usually you would think that would take an extended period of time, and it looks like
right, because like when they go to build a new stadium, right? Like they're looking for investment from owners, they're looking for investment from the league, they're looking for investment from like the city or the state. But it seems like with the $100 million they're doing in repairs, is just coming at like ticket prices. Like, where else are they recouping their money from?
Well, I mean, they're putting all sorts of concessions. They're expanding the team store to certain, this is a much bigger footprint. These guys are geniuses, so they're going to be fine. They know what they're doing. So
Cameron Parker is wanting for us to let the rumors fly. Taylor Lewan has landed in Denver, so that means it's 1,000% that he's signing here. Is basically what that means.
Right. Well, so but it's full disclosure. Full disclosure, by the way. What is it? The Bussin' with the Boys podcast. They are going to be covering the Colorado spring game. I don't know when that is. I don't know when their spring game is. Zach, if you are watching this podcast, please let us know when the CU spring game is. But maybe that is this weekend. But that's like the only thing that I can think of.
I refuse that logical answer, and I'm saying nope. He's signing with the Broncos. He's signing for a 7-year, $247 million contract, fully guaranteed.
Be like me, Mike.
Let it fly.
Be the objective Huskers fan, and appreciate the fact that he landed in Denver. And maybe it's possibly that he's here for the CU spring game.
Who cares about the CU spring game? Just saying.
Dude, I do. Did you see the video of Dion in Ralphie's trailer?
I love Dion, man.
So Prime he's afraid of Ralphie the Buffalo. And so they actually had him meet Ralphie's a female. I don't know if you knew that, but they had him meet Ralphie the other day. And in fact, if you've ever seen it, it's one of the greatest traditions in all of sports. The handlers run Ralphie around and then end back up in her trailer, which is like a big horse trailer. But she's running at full speed. Well, they have Prime standing in the trailer. There is a little barrier there, and his son is there, and someone else. And she came barreling through, and it is just he was terrified. It was so hysterical.
Yeah,
that video is amazing.
All right, so moving into the
so when they were. Well, I'll tell you this one more point. This was a few weeks ago when they were talking to him about Ralphie, and he was afraid. The woman said, you guys have something in common, and he goes, what's that? And he goes, and the lady said, well, you each have 8 toes. That was terrible.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. I like that. So going into the crux of the show, I was sitting there last night thinking, like, what are we going to talk about? I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make people angry. And so let's go Elway or Manning. Which quarterback would you take for the Denver Broncos? Let's say you're building a Broncos team that you want to win with, and you can pick anybody from the Broncos past or present or future. Well, not future because we don't know.
So you're saying
present. Like you start a quarterback, right? Yeah. Who are you going with a quarterback, Elway or Manning?
Well, so but I know you say Elway and Manning, but the way you described it, like if not saying I would do this, but like, are you saying like if I wanted to pick Craig Morton, is that kind of like what
you can pick anybody you want? I just assumed that it would be between Elway or Manning.
Okay. So my favorite,
Craig Morton.
No,
I swear to God, if you pick Drew Lock, we're gonna fight.
Hurt when he played for us.
If you pick Drew Lock, you're done.
So
no more.
Admittedly, my favorite quarterback between the two of John Elway and Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning. So I will clarify that. But in this day and age of the NFL, John Elway, and I said it before in a tweet that I had from like a few days ago, but like John Elway was Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes. So I will pick John Elway in this kind of environment, in this kind of day and age of the NFL. Put him, on this team. And, a lot of people might actually think that that's not a compliment, because, you should never compare someone to a Kansas City Chief player. But, Patrick Mahomes is the best player on the planet right now at the quarterback position. And when you turn on the Elway highlights, he was basically Patrick Mahomes before his time, rolling around the pocket and scrambling around with that huge arm. And along with that kind of accuracy as well with that huge arm. So you put him in this environment, I think he would do quite well, especially knowing the fact of, where the defensive backs are certainly at, as far as, the pass interference penalties and the opportunity for huge plays. Give me John Elway. But as I said earlier, Peyton Manning is my favorite quarterback between the two, but I'd have to go with John Elway in this current age of the NFL.
Glenn, your turn.
So, I mean, this is there's really no wrong answer here. I mean, Peyton Manning.
Yes, there is.
Just okay.
Shut up, Mike.
What Peyton did for those few years leading up, especially until that last year when Broncos actually won the Super Bowl, was, I mean, just the stuff of legend. You know, it just elevated everybody in the building. The guy we're indebted to him forever, and the fact that he still remains in Denver is something very, very cool, and that he's part of the, such a big part of the Broncos. That being said, as somebody that was around when Elway got to Denver, I mean, he changed everything. It was they had the Super Bowl in the late 70s. And then some dry spells. I mean, we had Steve DeBerg, we had Matt Robinson, we had just like the quarterback situation was in peril. And when Elway gets traded to the Broncos, that after getting picked by the Colts, I mean, and we got him for an absolute steal. I mean, Chris Hinton, Mark Herman, it was incredible. You got to go with John. Like Cam said, the arm. You watch those highlights and him zipping these things, improvising, just the toughness, and the fact that our first two Super Bowls that we won were with him, and the fact that he took us to three others that did not work out in our favor. Here's Sports Nonsense and Whiskey says Elway was Shanny, and that's true. Like Dan Reeves did not do John any favors, including drafting Tommy Maddox in the first round of the 1992 season. So I gotta go with the Duke, John Elway.
See, and I'm gonna go the opposite way. I'm gonna go Manning, because for me, it's like Manning led the greatest offense of all time with the Denver Broncos after having two neck surgeries. He was on borrowed time. We knew he was on borrowed time,
right?
And he still was able to have well over 5,000 yards, over 50 touchdowns. Like, it was absolutely incredible what he could do. And the players that he did it with, the majority of them are not household names. Like, you're not looking at like an Edgerrin James or a Reggie Wayne or Marvin Harrison. Like, you're looking at no Sean Moreno. You're looking at, you know what I'm saying?
Julius Thomas.
Lance Ball.
Owen
so,
Downs.
Like, I will always love Elway because of what he did with the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at quarterbacks for being the best quarterback for any team, legitimately is Peyton Manning. I mean, you can't really go GOAT because, Brady, but Manning is easily number 2 all time as quarterback in the NFL. So I don't know how I understand going with Elway because of the landscape of the NFL and how it looks now.
Yeah.
But I think Manning is able to do more with less than Elway was.
Well,
taking nothing away from Elway, and I'm not trying to insult him at all, but we don't win those 2 Super Bowls without Terrell Davis. We don't.
No, and that's a fair point.
And we don't win the 2015 Super Bowl without that defense. So, I mean, KB, good to see it. Elway played with 3 amigos. Not one had 100 receptions or 1,000-yard season. Fortunately, late in John's career, he had McCaffrey and Rod Smith and Shannon Sharp. But it's true. There was so much emphasis. I mean, just Reeves was famous for those, like, 2 runs up the middle and then passing on third down. And it was just an excruciating offense. But, I mean, listen, we're so fortunate to have 2 of the greats. And I would agree with Mike that I think Manning is the number 2 quarterback of all time. If we're just talking about, I thought we were just talking about based on their Broncos career, and obviously Peyton was here a lot less. I mean, conceivably, if Russ can turn this thing around and get his legacy back in order,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could conceivably have 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks that have played for the Broncos. I mean, that would be unprecedented.
And that is very unprecedented. And one of the things with Peyton Manning, and this is to the point of like if I was to change and go to Peyton Manning, like and say in this day and age in the NFL, like one of the biggest pros for Peyton Manning, if not the biggest pro, you did mention Marvin Harrison and you did mention Reggie Wayne. Well, those guys, to be completely honest, were actually like nobodies before Peyton Manning. And so Peyton Manning rose the careers of both of those guys along with a Brandon Stokely, a Dallas Clark, some of these other guys that, ended up being true players, for the Indianapolis Colts. Well, the thing with Peyton Manning is he's also like a smart intellectual mind. And that is never going to go away. And so in this day and age of the NFL, having that kind of smart thinking, that smart, of thinking about not just the play of this play of 1st and 10, but that 2nd and 10, or maybe that 2nd and 7, or that always thinking about the play ahead or 2 plays ahead and being outsmarting a defensive coordinator. That will always be there with Peyton Manning, and he was truly the human calculator. But so like admittedly Peyton Manning is my favorite quarterback, certainly between it, but I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's certainly one that it's a fun, it makes for a fun discussion and a fun debate though.
Yeah. Because you're not critical of either one of them. That's the thing.
No.
It's like,
no. Yeah.
We have reverence for both.
Right. And so it'll be interesting, certainly with Russ and if he can certainly resurrect, as you said, Glenn, like resurrect his career, if he can put himself back into that conversation. Because, I mean, it was just one bad year. Like, it was one bad year. He was on a Hall of Fame track. Maybe he's still on a Hall of Fame track to some people, but it's just like, like he only went down for 1 year. If he has we're not talking about like a 3-year, 4-year span, or even a 2-year span. Like he, maybe to some Seattle fans, he was on the decline the last 2 years or so. But I mean, that's a conversation with Seahawks fans and for what they've seen up close. But like, you're still talking about a guy who's been on track to potentially, if he doesn't throw that interception to Malcolm Butler, he will have 2 Super Bowl wins instead of 1 Super Bowl win, but he still attended 2 Super Bowls.
Yep.
Right. And let's face it, it's not like he had his down year with Sean Payton or any coach that couldn't last a full season. I mean, it was a disaster last year. So I think he's going to be fine. That's just my personal hunch.
Yeah.
And if he's not, then I mean, there are no excuses if he can't win with Sean Payton as his coach.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know about you guys. This is a separate point of just Russ and just overall with the schedule. And if Aaron Rodgers is going to end up being a New York Jet, but anybody that remembers, maybe the best games of Russell Wilson's career was against Aaron Rodgers. Some of like the best games of all time with Russ always used to happen with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there was, the playoff games, the regular season games. I mean, it was an absolute blast to watch Russ versus Aaron Rodgers in some of those games. There was the one where I think they were like down 10 and came back, and there was that famous onside kickoff for, that the Seahawks ended up recovering like in the playoffs. Like, so there's, make no bones about it, like there are exciting football between Rodgers and Russ in their careers.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Oh my gosh, he was. Nobody's ever been like him before or since.
No.
Just kind of expanding because I can. Like, obviously the best running back the Broncos have ever had is Terrell Davis.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you get 3 wide receivers in Broncos history. Who are you going with?
For a running back?
Wide receiver. You get 3. Who are you going with?
So I would go with Rod, DT.
Yeah.
And
it's that third one that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, who would be that third wide receiver if you could pick one?
Well, considering my favorite receiver of all time favorite player of all time is a wide receiver for the Broncos, who actually had a storied career, but not to the level of the guys you just mentioned. But Steve Watson was a tremendous receiver. McCaffrey has to be up there. Why he's not in the Ring of Fame just absolutely baffles me. you know, Demarius, but Rod Smith is the best wide receiver, I think, to the Broncos have ever had.
I almost want to put Brandon Marshall up there somewhere too.
Talent,
like he didn't do a lot outside of Denver, but he did when he was in Denver.
See, you're just considering him because he's the only one out there saying nice things about the Broncos these days. So that's
which is actually kind of refreshing, is it not? Like, this is a complete side plot to this, but it's actually refreshing to hear a guy like that, Brandon Marshall, who at one point was like on the outs with Denver and talking about Denver. Like, it's kind of nice and refreshing to kind of see him talk so much, positivity about it. And by the way, it's a raw podcast, but if you guys get a chance, go check out his podcast, the I Am Athlete. You get some pretty good nuggets in there, from the I Am Athlete. I don't know. Like, I feel like the third one is kind of like the debate of Elway versus Manning. Like, I really don't think there's a right or wrong answer, because like, I would probably, and this is at least like right now, I would probably roll with Ed McCaffrey. I would probably roll with McCaffrey maybe as that third.
Even someone like a Wes Welker, he wasn't a Bronco very long, but the impact that he had was so great. Decker was great, and then he got offered a massive contract and he had no choice but to take it, quite honestly. It's there's been a lot of, like, I don't want to say average receivers. I'd say above average receivers, just maybe not a ton of superstars, but
Wes Welker.
Wes Welker was a great wide receiver.
No. I'm not calling Wes. I'm just saying, like, over the course of time, like, even the comment about the Three Amigos earlier, they were okay. Vance was.
No, I'm just throwing names out there that I'm remembering.
I think Wes Welker was phenomenal. Just the toughness. Ed McCaffrey getting hit and then he'd come up and he'd be doing the like getting the cobwebs out. Man, he was great.
Yep. I feel like Brandon Marshall is also like the Clinton Portis argument for having him number 2. Because if we're talking, like, as far as talent, when I say number 2, I mean like Clinton Portis.
Running back?
Yeah, like Clinton Portis at like number 2 for like running back. All
Wouldn't
time.
That be Floyd Little?
I'm just saying like it would be with, like, if you want to be kind of like a shock job.
Clinton wasn't even around.
I get it.
But, like, for what he was able to do and what he was able to do in warranting us to acquire Champ Bailey, who knows what the career would have been like had Clinton Portis stayed in Denver for as long as he did. But even like for Brandon Marshall, who would have thought, like, had he stayed in Denver, like, who would have thought what his career would have been like, in Denver.
Ooh.
So
what if you put Sharp in at wide receiver instead of tight end?
Oh, then he's our third.
Yeah, then he would definitely be your third.
Yeah.
By the way,
I feel like the whole Brandon Marshall thing too is like he was part of that whole Darrent Williams evening, and I think after that they just thought that a change of scenery was probably better. This is just my speculation. They did get a lot for him in the trade, so, and he ended up doing very well, and he's done a tremendous job.
I thought that was the other guy, the guy that came from Green Bay.
No, Javon Walker. But yeah, I think, as I remember, I believe that the altercation or the initial interaction did involve Marshall.
Yeah, it's funny.
Not that I'm blaming him for any of that. Not at all.
Right.
But I think after something so traumatic like that, you might just need to change the scenery.
It's funny. I mentioned about Clinton Portis. I don't know why, but we also mentioned too about, like, we mentioned him earlier with Noshawn Moreno, who Manning had with his backfield. So I always bring this up because it always surprises me when I look it up as far as, like, the all-time statistics for rushing yards. But it's crazy. But it's crazy to me that Noshawn Moreno is like 6th all time in rushing yards. Like, knowing his career and where he started from, instead of Noshawn Moreno, he was always called No Show Moreno because he wasn't showing out as a running back. With Josh McDaniels being the pick and so on and so forth. But it's like, Moreno to finish like where he did at I was pretty impressive. Brandon Lloyd had maybe one of the greatest seasons.
Oh, I love him.
We forgot Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, I was gonna say we forgot about Emmanuel Sanders too. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
Now it's getting fun.
Too.
Yeah.
So just to give you here, I'll go over the top 5 running backs in Broncos history. And Noshawn is number 6, by the way. But obviously Terrell Davis, Floyd Little, Sammy Winder. He was legendary. Otis Armstrong, the late great Otis Armstrong, and then Mike Anderson.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be CJ.
CJ Anderson is 9. So Noshawn at 6, Elway at 7, Portis at 8, CJ at 9, and John Keyworth, a former CU buff, played back in the 70s.
Elway is in that too, isn't he?
Elway was 7th.
Yeah.
Mike Anderson, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
He's the guy that brought back the Mile High Salute.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had some, like Bobby Humphrey. What could have been,
Yeah.
Where's Maurice Claret at?
Columbus, Ohio, I think. We had Tatum Bell, Phil Lindsay was 12.
Tatum Bell, Olandis Gary.
Olandis is 20.
Wow.
There was that stretch there where they had a different guy hitting 1,000 yards every year,
every season.
Yeah, it was right. It was Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson, Tatum Bell, Mike Bell.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Man, it's just crazy when you look at kind of like that list of like how good the running backs they had were, and what could have been with a lot of them.
I think he served. Yeah, Mike Anderson did.
Yeah, Mike did.
Right. Ken Booker's right. Sammy was a fan favorite. He was, he plodded along, but when he scored a touchdown, he would do. Oh, Reuben Drones was another one.
Reuben Drones.
Oh, so good. Gosh, these guys were just. I mean, there was just that stretch there where the offensive line was just. Oh, that was great.
You know who was a good running back that I really wanted the Broncos to have that never came to the Broncos? Mike Allstott. That guy would have been fantastic.
Was he a running back or was he a fullback?
He was a fullback.
Doesn't matter. Like you put him in a Shanahan running system. Holy crap.
Actually, they did have it. They did have a Mike Allstott. His name was Peyton Hillis.
But like when you think of Allstott, I mean, you can just hear Chris Berman doing his highlights and the making the sounds of him hitting
the bus.
people.
Or rumbling, bumbling, stumbling.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis.
Gerald Wilhite, if you remember him, he played back. He was the guy that caught. So Elway's first comeback, they were down 19-0 against the Baltimore Colts, and in Denver. And it was his first comeback. The Broncos ended up coming back and winning it 21-19, which really was good for Elway because he was able to stick it to the team that he didn't want to draft him in the first place. And Gerald Wilhite, the running back, scored the game-winning touchdown for that.
You are correct.
And he would do the backflips in the end zone. But he was our first-round pick, I think, in like 82.
Any other nostalgia we want to bring up? Any other? I
don't know.
Any other positions that we can just name people off at?
Well, here you go. So, like, say we do put Shannon Sharp at wide receiver. Like, say he's our third. Who would your tight end be?
There's really
Riley Odom, man.
Though, right? Really? I'll say Julius Thomas.
No, Riley. Look at Riley Odoms. I implore. I mean, the fact that, again, he's another Ring of Fame guy that should be in there. And he truly does have numbers that could have been considered for the Hall of Fame. And a guy his size and with his hands and speed in this day and age would have absolutely been legendary. Riley Odoms. Check it out.
Tony Scheffler.
Who's the one that we had a guest on the show? It was like 2 years ago, Glenn, and he was like, "This is the greatest tight end in
Virgil Green."
Virgil Green. There you go. Virgil Green. That's the one.
He is definitely, admittedly, he is definitely a tight end. I wish of kind of like what could have been, like had they utilized him just a little bit more. I'd be kind of curious to know what. Daniel Graham was like a guy who was like here for what, like a year or two, like the local guy, Daniel Graham, and former Patriot. You know,
and his dad played for the Broncos. So.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, they definitely have some choices. Tony Scheffler, speaking of like a what could have been tight end, you know, with that team that they had.
That's all right. It's all good. Well, with that, that's gonna about do it for the show tonight. We loved, dude. The nostalgia factor right now is so high. Like,
I love it.
I love it.
This is like totally up my alley, as you know.
Make sure that you check out every show that goes on the MHRT network. We have a bunch of them. We got the Cluster Puck on Monday. We've got 5280 and Sports Nonsense and Whiskey on Tuesdays. Then you got the Wild Wild West and Mainly Broncos on Wednesday. You got the BPA Show on Thursday. And then you got Broncos Breakdown, the Bronco Bill on Friday. And then you got the Neighborhood rotating between Saturday and Sunday. And we're going to be covering all of the Avs playoff games. So make sure you check that out as well. Like, subscribe, share, turn on notifications, tell your best friends about it, hide your sisters, your wives, your kids, all that kind of stuff. And we will see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.